Welcome back to the deep dive. Look, usually when we talk about money, we are talking about the anxiety of it.
Right.
Do I have enough? Why is my grocery bill higher than it was last year? Or maybe if we're feeling fancy, we talk about investment strategies. But
Yeah.
today, we are doing something completely different.
Yeah.
We are going to judge money.
And not just judge it based on uh, popularity, which is usually how we do it, right?
Right. It's always a popularity contest. The US dollar is the prom king simply because everyone uses it.
Exactly. It's the default.
But the stack of documents we have in front of us today, it's essentially a report card for the world's money.
A report card. I like that.
And it's not grading based on vibes. It's not about how we feel about the economy this week. It's grading on structural engineering.
And that is such a fascinating pivot because most people, when you talk about currency value, they think of it as a price.
Yeah, just a number on a screen.
It's just a number. How many euros can I get for my dollar? How much is Bitcoin worth today? But that price, I mean, it's just a snapshot of sentiment.
Right.
It's supply and demand at that exact moment. It doesn't tell you if the thing you are holding in your hand or in your digital wallet is actually built to last.
Exactly. It's like buying a car based solely on the cool paint job without ever, popping the hood to see if the engine is made of duct tape and prayers.
A very expensive mistake to make.
It is. So the source material we're covering today is the Global Monetary and Exchange Excellence Score, which is a mouthful, so we'll call it GME.
GMES.
Got it. This is a report from September 2025, and the mission of this deep dive is to unpack the score to figure out how you even begin to grade the quality of money. And then, and I really cannot wait to get to this part, we are going to look at the rankings.
The rankings.
Yeah.
This is where things get, well, let's say controversial.
Controversial is putting it mildly, because this report doesn't just rank the usual suspects, the dollar, the euro, the yen.
No, it throws everything into the same arena.
Everything. We're talking fiat currencies, cryptocurrencies, stable coins, and there is a new class of money at rank number 3 that, honestly, I thought was a typo when I first read it.
It is definitely not a typo. No, it's a paradigm shift hiding in a spreadsheet.
We'll get there. Rank number 3 is something called ASC, the OWO Now sovereign currency. And it beats out almost every major fiat currency and every single cryptocurrency on structural design.
Which is the whole point of the report.
Exactly. But before we get to the winners and losers, we have to understand the game. Because historically, comparing these things has been, basically impossible. How do you compare the U.S. dollar, which is backed by, the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, its military, its tax revenue, to Bitcoin, which is backed by commute and energy?
Or to a stable coin, for that matter, which is often backed by promises and sometimes a very murky, unaudited bank account somewhere.
Right. It's like trying to judge a triathlon where one competitor is a marathon runner, one is a shark, and one is a Honda Civic.
They all move, but they're fundamentally different species.
That's the problem the GMES framework tries to solve. It's attempting to create a unified field theory for money.
Right. It creates a single score from 0 to 100 by operationalizing standards from the heavy hitters. We're talking the IMF, the Bank for International Settlements, or BIS, and the Financial Action Task Force, FATF.
So it's taking their rule books and turning them into a grade.
Precisely. It basically says, I don't care if you are printed on cotton paper in Washington, D.C., or minted on a blockchain in the cloud. Do you function as safe, reliable money? That's the only question.
Okay, so let's get our hands dirty. Segment 1, the methodology. Because if we're going to trust these rankings, we need to know this isn't just an opinion poll. This isn't, 5 central bankers we think are cool.
Far from it. The source material goes to great lengths to emphasize that GMES is designed to be auditable, back-testable, and modular.
What does that mean in practice?
It means they take raw values from dozens and dozens of indicators, inflation rates, debt levels, you name it, and they transform them into a standardized score. But, and this is absolutely crucial, they apply some statistical hygiene to the data first.
Statistical hygiene. Okay, I saw that. There were 2 terms in the scoring mechanics section that sounded incredibly fancy, and I want to unpack them. The first was Windsorization.
Windsorization.
It sounds like a specialized procedure you'd get at a very expensive British dentist.
It does sound painful, doesn't it? But it's actually a way to save the data from itself. It's about dealing with outliers.
Okay.
Imagine you were trying to calculate the average height of people in a room, because you need to design a door frame. You measure 10 people, 9 of them are between, say, 5 and 6 feet tall. Pretty normal.
Right.
And the 10th person is a literal giant, like 20 feet tall,
Oh.
a total statistical freak.
Okay, a very tall person.
If you just average that raw data with a giant in there, your average height is going to be something like 7.5 feet. Now, if you build your door frame based on that average,
It's going to be wrong for almost everyone. The 9 normal-sized people will have a ridiculously huge door, and it's still too small for the giant.
exactly, the giant is an outlier. Windsorization is the statistical process of sort of clipping those extremes.
Hmm.
They typically trim the top and bottom fifth percentiles so that those crazy one-off events don't distort the reality of the middle.
Okay, I get the giant in the room analogy, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Isn't that freak event exactly what I need to know about?
That's a fair question.
I mean, if I'm investing in a currency and it had a flash crash of 99% last Tuesday, and you Windsorize that data point out of existence to make the average look pretty, aren't you essentially lying to me about the risk?
That is the classic critique of any kind of statistical smoothing, and it's a really important point. But here's the counterargument that the GMES report makes. They aren't trying to measure short-term volatility in this metric. There's a separate indicator for that.
Ah, okay.
They are trying to measure structural quality. Think of it like a structural engineer inspecting a bridge.
Okay, let's stick with the bridge.
If a meteorite falls out of the sky and hits the bridge, chipping the paint or punching a small hole in the asphalt, that is a freak event. It's bad luck.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily mean the steel beams were poorly made. It doesn't mean the architect was incompetent. Windsorization is about clearing away the meteorite strikes so you can see if the steel itself is rusting from the inside out.
So it's trying to distinguish between, say, bad luck and bad management.
Precisely. If a currency's exchange rate goes wild because of a global pandemic, that's an outlier event that affects everyone. But if it crashes because the government decided to print 1 trillion new units to pay for a parade, that's a structural flaw. And the model will catch that in other metrics, like the ones for fiscal sustainability.
Okay, that makes sense. You're not hiding the danger, you're just isolating the variable you want to measure.
Exactly.
Now, the other term was Bayesian shrinkage, which, again, sounds like something that happens after a cold swim.
It does. But it's actually a very clever method for dealing with ignorance. Or, more politely, for dealing with sparse data.
What do you mean by sparse data?
Well, let's say you have a small developing nation, or maybe a brand new digital currency project. They don't report every single economic statistic every single month like the US or Germany does.
So you have holes in the spreadsheet.
Right, you have gaps. Maybe they miss a GDP report 1 quarter, or their inflation data is 6 months out of date. Now, you can't just give them a 0 for that metric, because that would unfairly destroy their overall score.
And you can't just assume they're perfect either.
You can't. So Bayesian shrinkage allows the model to make an educated guess. It looks at the priors, which is just a fancy word for the averages, for similar groups.
Okay.
So if a country in a specific region with a similar income level usually has inflation around 4%, the model will temporarily plug in that 4% as a placeholder. It shrinks the estimate toward the group average until real hard data arrives.
But isn't that just guessing? If I don't know my bank balance, I can't just guess it's the same as my neighbors and hope for the best.
It is a guess, but it's a probability-weighted guess. It's a way of saying, based on what we know about things like this is the most likely value. It prevents the model from flying completely blind. And to their credit, the report is really big on transparency here. Every single score has a full audit trail. You can click in and see the source link for the data point, the timestamp of when it was collected, and even a reviewer's signature.
And I saw they have something called a freshness tag.
Yes, that is my favorite feature, honestly. It tells you the median number of days since the underlying observations were made.
So you know if you're looking at fresh data or stale data.
Exactly. So if you're looking at a score, you can see if it's based on data from yesterday or data from 2023. And in the crypto world, as you know, data from 2023 might as well be from the Stone Age.
That's a very good point. Okay, so the machine works. We have a system. It's transparent. It has ways to handle outliers and missing data. Now let's talk about what it's actually measuring. The report breaks this down into 6 pillars of excellence.
Right.
This is the meat and potatoes. Let's dive into segment 2. Pillars 1 and 2, which they call the hard economics.
This is the foundation of everything. It's
Yep.
worth a combined 40 points out of 100. If you don't have this, you don't have a currency, you just have a token or a collectible.
So pillar A is macroeconomic soundness, worth 20 points.
Correct.
And the very first item under that is price stability, which, let's be honest, is what everyone watching their grocery bill cares about.
It is. It's the one we feel most directly. But notice the specific phrasing in the report.
Yeah.
It's not just about low inflation. It's about anchored inflation expectations.
Unpack that for us. What is the difference between low inflation and anchored expectations?
Okay, so low inflation is just a number. It's a statistic from last month, 2%, 3%, whatever. Anchored expectations are a psychological state. It's about public trust.
Okay.
Let's look at a historical example. Think about the U.S. in the 1970s, or maybe Turkey in the early 2020s. When inflation started rising, people panicked. They thought, okay, if it's 5% today, it's probably going to be 10% tomorrow and 20% next month.
So they rush out to buy stuff.
They rush to buy goods, anything, to get rid of their cash.
Right.
And that action, that panic, pushes prices up even faster. Their expectations became unanchored from reality.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is the definition of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, compare that to a high-scoring regime. If inflation ticks up to 3% in, say, Switzerland today, most people don't panic buy canned beans.
No.
They assume, with a high degree of confidence, that the Swiss National Bank will do its job, raise rates if needed, and bring inflation back down. They trust the system. That trust is the anchor.
I see. So a currency with anchored expectations can survive a bad year or a temporary shock. A currency without them just collapses at the first sign of trouble.
It's the difference between hitting a pothole and worrying the wheels are going to fall off your car versus hitting a pothole and knowing your suspension is solid and can handle it.
Great analogy. Okay, next up under macro soundness is fiscal sustainability.
Right. This looks at debt levels and specifically the interest-to-revenue ratio.
That sounds like personal finance 101. Don't spend more than you make.
It is, but for a country. The core question is, can the government actually afford the credit card bills it is racking up? If a country is spending 30%, 40%, or even more of its annual tax revenue just to pay interest on old debt,
That's a huge red flag.
it's a massive red flag. It means they have no money left for the things a country needs to function: schools, roads, healthcare, defense. And eventually, the only way they can pay those interest bills is to print more money.
Which destroys the currency and takes you right back to the unanchored inflation problem.
It's a death spiral.
Okay, which leads us to the external position. This mentions something called the ARA metric.
That stands for Assessing Reserve Adequacy. It's a framework developed by the IMF. Think of it as the nation's emergency fund.
The National Rainy Day Fund.
Exactly. It asks a simple question. If the world suddenly stops lending to you, if global investors get scared and pull their money out all at once, do you have enough foreign cash, usually US dollars or euros, sitting in the vault to pay for your essential imports and short-term debts for a few months?
And if the answer is no,
If the answer is no, your currency can crash the moment the market gets jittery. It's what triggers a classic emerging market currency crisis.
okay, so that's Pillar A. It's all about the numbers on the national balance sheet. Now, Pillar B, monetary and FX regime credibility, also worth 20 points. This seems to be less about the math and more about the people in charge.
This is where the politics come in. Pillar B is where the political drama really happens, and the single biggest factor here is independence.
Central bank independence.
Yes, and this isn't some abstract academic concept. It is the bright red line between a strong, stable currency and a failed one.
It's about the ability to say no.
Specifically, the ability of the central bank governor to say, no, Mr. President, or Madam Prime Minister, we will not lower interest rates just because you have an election coming up in 6 months.
So how does the model measure that? It's not like politicians admit to meddling.
No, but you can look for legal safeguards. The report looks for things like term security. Is the central bank governor appointed for a long, fixed term? Or can the president fire them via a tweet?
Is that a literal metric? Can be fired by tweet.
Essentially, yes. They look at the laws governing the central bank. If a central banker knows their job is safe only as long as they keep the government happy and print money for the ruling party's pet projects, that currency is fundamentally broken. It scores a 0 on independence.
And the market can smell that weakness from a mile away.
Instantly. You want a central banker who is notoriously stubborn, maybe even a little boring. A high GMUS score actually rewards stubbornness and predictability.
That's fascinating. We usually think of government unity as a good thing, but in the world of money, You want a little friction. You want the bank to be the designated driver when the government wants to keep the party going.
That is the perfect way to put it. The central bank's job is to take away the punch bowl just when the party is getting good. The other key part of this pillar is what the report calls the reaction function.
Reaction function. Sounds like something out of a physics textbook.
It just means, does the market know what the central bank will do if X happens? If inflation goes up by 1%, do we have a pretty good idea that they will raise interest rates by a certain amount? Or is it a total guessing game every time they have a meeting?
So it's about transparency and predictability.
Exactly. Markets hate uncertainty more than anything else. A high-quality currency is, frankly, boring. It's predictable. If the central bank is erratic, if its decisions seem based on whim or political pressure, the score drops like a rock.
Okay, so killers 1 and 2 are the bedrock. Is the economy real? Is the debt manageable? And are the adults in charge actually independent and predictable? Got it. Now let's move to segment 3, pillars 3 and 4. The report calls this the plumbing and the rules.
Right.
This gets into the nitty-gritty, the stuff that most people, including me, tend to ignore until the moment it breaks.
Absolutely. And when it breaks, it's a catastrophe. So Pillar C is market microstructure and payments design. It's worth a hefty 20 points. We often call this the plumbing of the financial system.
It's not sexy.
It's not sexy at all, but if the toilet doesn't flush, the whole house is unlivable pretty quickly.
Good point. So what are we looking for here in the plumbing?
First, FX market quality. They look at a few things like bid-ask spreads and market depth. But a key indicator they track is CLS participation.
CLS, what is that?
CLS stands for Continuous Linked Settlement. It's a global system that most people have never heard of, but it prevents the entire foreign exchange market from collapsing.
That sounds incredibly technical. Why should I, a normal person, care about CLS?
Because of something called Herstatt risk. It's named after a German bank that failed spectacularly back in the 1970s.
Okay.
Imagine you and I are two big banks. I'm in London, you're in New York. I send you 100 million euros in the morning, London time. You're supposed to send me the equivalent in US dollars later that afternoon, New York time.
Right, because of the time difference.
Exactly. But what if, at noon, your bank goes bankrupt?
Ouch. So you've sent me the euros, but I haven't sent you the dollars back yet. You're out 100 million euros.
I'm out 100 million euros and I got nothing back. That is settlement risk.
Yeah.
And if it happens to one bank, it can create a domino effect that takes down the whole system. CLS is basically a financial escrow service. It eliminates that risk by ensuring that both sides of the trade happen simultaneously.
Payment versus payment.
Precisely.
Right.
If your currency isn't settled through CLS, you are carrying a huge, often invisible risk. Being part of that system is a massive badge of safety and quality.
Okay, that makes sense. Then the report talks about payments rails, and I saw a specific standard mentioned here, ISO 2022. Why is that specific standard so important?
This is probably the single biggest upgrade in the history of banking that nobody on the street is talking about. ISO 2022 is becoming the new universal language for payments data.
Okay, explain it like I'm 5.
Right. The old system, things like Swift MT messages, was like sending a text message from a 1990s flip phone. It was very limited. You could say, pay Bob $50. That's it. It's dumb data.
Just the amount and the destination?
Exactly. ISO 2022 is like sending a modern email. It has a subject line, a body, and you can add rich attachments and carry a huge amount of structured data along with the payment.
So instead of pay Bob $50?
It'd be pay Bob $50 for invoice #234, which is related to purchase order #5678. And by the way, here is Bob's tax ID and the shipping address for the delivery of the bananas.
Ah, so it's not just moving money, it's moving information about the money.
Exactly. And that allows for incredible levels of automation. A business can automatically reconcile its books the second a payment comes in. It reduces errors, it reduces fraud, it makes the entire economy faster and more efficient. A currency that is ISO 2022 native is basically future-proof. One that isn't is running on obsolete technology.
And this pillar also covers resilience. What happens when things break?
This is all about cyber resilience. Do the banks and the central bank have robust recovery plans? We live in an age of state-sponsored cyber warfare. If a hacker takes down the central bank's main server, does the entire payment system for the country just stop?
Which would be chaos.
Total chaos. Or is there a backup? Is there a contingency plan? This metric measures operational toughness. It's the financial equivalent of having a spare tire and a jack in your car.
Okay, so that's the plumbing.
Yeah.
Now, Pillar D is regulatory alignment and financial integrity. 15 points. This sounds like the rule book.
It is the rule book. This tracks a country's adherence to global standards, particularly things like Basel III and now Basel IV.
And those are
Those are the international rules about how much capital and liquidity banks need to hold. Basically, they're designed to make sure banks don't take on too much risk and collapse during a crisis, forcing taxpayers to bail them out.
And then there is AML-CFT, anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism. I've heard those terms before. But the report specifies effectiveness, not just technical compliance. What's the difference?
That is a crucial distinction. Technical compliance means a country has passed all the right laws. On paper, they look great. It is illegal to launder money in our country. Great. But if nobody ever gets caught, and the financial police don't have the resources to investigate complex cases, and the judges are susceptible to bribery, then the effectiveness is zero.
So it's the difference between having a speed limit sign on the highway and actually having a cop with a radar gun to enforce it.
That is the perfect analogy. The FATF, the global watchdog for this stuff, actually gives countries two separate ratings, and GMES looks at the effectiveness rating. This hurts a lot of developing nations and frankly, a lot of crypto projects that claim to be compliant but have no real enforcement mechanism.
Okay, so we've covered the hard economics, the regimes, the plumbing, and the rules. That's a total of 75 points. The last 25 points come from Pillars 5 and 6, which the report groups under the theme of the future.
Right. This is where the modern world really enters the equation. Pillar E is inclusion, competition, and sustainability. It's worth 10 points.
Financial inclusion seems straightforward enough. Can people actually get a bank account?
Yes, that's the core of it. What percentage of the population is banked? What's the digital wallet penetration? But it also includes competition. This looks at things like open banking APIs, meaning can you, the customer, switch banks easily? Or is all your financial data held hostage by your current bank? In a high-scoring system, the customer owns their data. They can easily and securely share it with other apps or banks to get better interest rates or cheaper loans. It promotes competition.
And sustainability. This feels like a very 2025 addition to a framework like this.
It is, and it's quite forward-looking. It asks if the central bank and the regulators have a formal governance process for thinking about climate risk. Do they have a green taxonomy in their financial system?
What does that mean, a green taxonomy?
It means, do they have clear official definitions for what actually counts as a green investment? It prevents greenwashing. But more importantly, from a risk perspective, do they understand the danger that climate change poses to the banks they regulate? For instance, if a major bank holds a lot of mortgages in a coastal city that is projected to be underwater in 30 years, that bank is carrying a massive long-term risk. A good currency regulator in this framework is forcing banks to look at that risk today, not wait until the flood actually comes.
Right. Okay, finally, Pillar F, currency and digital cash design, 15 points. This is where we get into the physical cash in your wallet versus the digital cash of the future.
Exactly. For physical cash, they look at things you might expect. Anti-counterfeiting technology, durability of the banknotes, but also accessibility, like do the bills have tactile features for the visually impaired?
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
But the heavy weighting here is on the digital side. Is the currency ready for a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, or for a world with regulated stablecoins?
And the report mentions two key features here that stood out to me: privacy tiers and offline resilience.
That is the holy grail of digital cash design. Offline resilience asks a simple question. Can I still use my digital money when the power is out or the internet is down?
Which is a huge advantage of physical cash today.
A huge advantage. And privacy tiers gets at the biggest fear people have about digital money. Can I buy a coffee anonymously, or does the government now have a record of every single penny I spend for the rest of my life?
The coffee test.
It is the coffee test. A high score here implies a design that can intelligently balance safety, stopping terrorists from moving money with fundamental privacy, letting me buy a sandwich without creating a permanent government record. And that is a very, very hard needle to thread.
So that is the scorecard. Wow. It's incredibly comprehensive. It covers everything from the national debt to whether a blind person can tell a $10 bill from a $20 bill, all the way to whether the entire computer system can survive a major hacker attack.
It really is a 360-degree view.
Okay, so now we have to get to the main event, segment 5, the rankings reveal.
The rankings, let's do it.
This report, remember, is from September 2025, and it identifies a top tier, what it calls the global benchmark class. These are currencies scoring between 80 and 85. Let's start at the top. Number one, and really no surprise here, the US dollar.
Still the king. The dollar wins on the sheer brute force of its network effects. The report highlights its reserve status, the deepest foreign exchange markets in the world, and near universal global acceptance.
Right. You can go almost anywhere in the world, from a bazaar in Marrakesh to a corporate boardroom in Tokyo, and people will recognize and value a $100 bill.
That network effect is incredibly powerful and hard to overcome.
But it's not perfect, right? The score isn't 100. The report specifically mentions weaknesses: governance risk via debt and politicization.
That's the Achilles heel. The U.S. has a massive and growing national debt, which hurts its fiscal sustainability score. And its political process can be, let's say, volatile. That introduces uncertainty, which drags the score down.
So what saves it? What keeps it at number one?
The plumbing, that market microstructure score from Pillar C. The liquidity, the ability to buy and sell trillions of dollars worth of assets every single day without moving the price, is just unmatched by anyone else. That depth saves it.
Okay. Number two is the euro.
Right behind the dollar. The euro has a very strong and independent central bank in the ECB and, of course, broad adoption across a huge economic bloc. But its weakness is what the report calls governance complexity.
Meaning you have all these different countries trying to share one currency.
Exactly. You have Germany, France, Italy, Spain, all with very different fiscal policies, different debt levels, different political priorities, trying to operate under a single monetary policy. That structural tension keeps it firmly in second place.
And now we have to stop here because I'm looking at the chart and I see the dollar at number one, I see the euro at number two, and then at number three, beating the Australian dollar, beating the pound sterling, beating the Swiss franc, is ASC, the A1 sovereign currency. I have never used this. I don't know anyone who has used this. What is going on here? Did the report authors make some kind of huge mistake?
It's not a mistake, but it is definitely a provocation. And this is where the GMESS methodology, which we spent all that time on, gets really controversial. You have to remember what it's grading.
It's grading design and structure, not just popularity or current usage.
Exactly. It's looking at the blueprint.
But number three, the source says it's backed by, am I reading this correctly, 4 quadrillion Australian dollars.
Yes, that is the figure cited in the report, the MAS1 reserve.
Okay, hold on. Let's just pause on that number. 4 quadrillion. That is a cartoonish amount of money. Global GDP is what, around 100 trillion US dollars. This claim is for a reserve that's something like 40 times the entire global economy's annual output. If I'm a listener, I'm calling scam right now. How does the report even begin to justify this?
And that is absolutely the right question to ask. If this were a market capitalization claim for a company, it would be absurd on its face. But the report breaks down the nuance here. It describes the ASC as being covenant-backed as opposed to debt-backed, like the dollar.
What does that mean in plain English?
Okay, so traditional fiat money, like the US dollar, is fundamentally a debt instrument. It's created by lending. Its value ultimately comes from the government's ability to demand it for payment of taxes. The ASC is claiming a different kind of backing, one based on the assessed value of natural capital and sovereign assets at their gross value.
So they are pricing the earth? Is that what's happening?
In a way, yes. Think of it like this. The market value of a mountain is zero until you start digging rocks out of it, crushing them up and selling them. That's the old extractive economy model.
Right.
The covenant value or natural capital value of that same mountain would include the value of the clean water that flows from it, the biodiversity it supports, the minerals still in the ground, the land itself, all valued as a holistic asset in situ or in its original place.
So they're pricing the value of the whole mountain, not just the rocks you can sell from it this year.
Exactly. And because the GMES model has metrics that heavily reward asset backing over debt backing, and because the ASC is designed with zero debt, it shoots up the rankings on a structural basis. It's perfect on paper, according to the model's rules.
Even if you can't actually buy a coffee with it at Starbucks yet. It's like comparing a taxi that has driven 1,000,000 miles, like the dollar, to a detailed, theoretically perfect blueprint for a spaceship, which is the ASC. The spaceship is technically better on paper, but it hasn't actually flown yet.
That is the perfect analogy. And the report notes this explicitly. It says ASC ranks number 3 despite pending adoption metrics. It wins on design. It is purpose-issued, meaning it was designed from the ground up to solve the problems of debt and inflation that plague fiat currencies. The report says it scores an entry score of a 111 on pure design, which is literally off their own charts.
So it's a direct challenge to the incumbents. It's the report's way of saying, this is what money could look like if we built it from scratch today without all the historical baggage of debt.
Precisely. It represents that conceptual shift we talked about, from debt-based fiat to covenant or asset-backed models. It's a huge, huge statement.
Okay, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the quadrillions, but let's round out the top 5 so we have the full picture. Number 4 is the Australian dollar, the AUD.
Right. Resource-backed, a very credible and independent central bank in the RPA. Australia has fantastic, robust payment infrastructure. It's a very solid, very real currency. It's the boring, reliable friend you want to have drive you to the airport.
And number 5, the British pound, the GBP.
Historic credibility. The Bank of England literally invented a lot of modern central banking. But, as the score notes, it is weaker since Brexit. It's lost some of that deep economic connectivity to its largest trading partner, which hurts its growth quality score from Pillar A.
Okay, so that's the VIP section. Dollar, euro, ASC, Aussie dollar, pound. Now let's look at the rest of the pack. Segment 6 covers the upper mid-tier, the mid-tier, and, well, the failures. This is where we see the crypto giants and some major global economies.
Right. In the upper mid-tier, so scoring between 65 and 75, we find currencies like the Japanese yen, JPY. It's a traditional safe haven. But it's dragged down by what the report calls prolonged low rates credibility. They've had zero or negative interest rates for so long that it's hard for them to maneuver. They're kind of stuck in a policy corner.
And then we have the crypto and stablecoins finally entering the chat. USDT, or Tether, is in this tier.
Yes. Tether is, massively used. It has high liquidity. But the report flags that key weakness. Reserves credibility questioned. Do they actually have the one-to-one dollar backing that they claim they have? That uncertainty, that lack of a clear audit trail, caps their score. You can't get a perfect score in Pillar D, financial integrity, if your books are a black box.
Ethereum, ETH.
Ethereum is amazing as programmable money. It has a huge, vibrant ecosystem, but it suffers from volatility and governance centralization risk. The fact that the price jumps around so much makes it a poor store of value in the traditional sense, and the governance is still quite concentrated among a small group of developers.
And the big one, Bitcoin, BTC. The report calls it digital gold, but still ranks it in this upper mid-tier. Why isn't it number 1? The Bitcoin maximalists are going to be very mad about this.
They are, but the report is brutal but fair here, I think. It acknowledges Bitcoin's primary strength, hard cap. That absolute scarcity is a powerful feature, and it scores well on that. But its overall score is limited by 2 major factors, volatility and low throughput.
Throughput meaning speed.
Meaning volume, really.
Yeah.
Can it process enough transactions for daily global use? And the answer is no. If the whole world tried to buy their morning coffee with Bitcoin tomorrow, the network would grind to a halt and fees would go to the moon.
So it's a great asset, but not great money.
It's great as a settlement layer or a store of value, like a bar of gold in a vault. But functionally, as money you use to buy milk and bread, the design has significant limitations compared to modern ISO 2022 rails that can process thousands of transactions per second for fractions of a penny.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a vault, not a checking account. Okay, let's drop down to the mid-tier. Scores from 50 to 65. The report calls this group functional but fragile.
Here we see some other major crypto projects like Solana, SOL. Solana is known for its high throughput, it's very fast, and has very low fees. Sounds great, right?
Sounds like the future, yeah.
But the report dings it hard for outages plus governance risks. It breaks. The network literally turns off sometimes. You cannot run a global financial system on a platform that might need a full reboot on a Tuesday afternoon. That reliability hit just kills its score in the resilience category.
And this is also where we see a lot of major emerging market currencies, like the Brazilian real, BRL, the Indian rupee, INR, and the Mexican peso, MXN.
Yes. These countries have incredible strengths. India's digital payment stack, the UPI system, is arguably the best in the world. Brazil's PIX system is amazing. But they're all vulnerable to external shocks.
What do you mean?
If the U.S. Federal Reserve raises interest rates, money flies out of Mexico and Brazil, and their currencies can crash. If the U.S. dollar sneezes, the Mexican peso catches a cold. That external dependency, that vulnerability, drags down their overall macroeconomic soundness score.
Now, the bottom of the barrel, the lower tier, with scores under 50, weak and unstable.
This is a pretty sobering list, as you expect.
Yeah.
You have the classic hyperinflationary currencies, the Venezuelan bolivar, VEV, the Zimbabwe dollar, ZWL. These are currencies where public trust has completely and utterly evaporated. The anchor we talked about earlier is gone. It's adrift.
But here's the real kicker. Here's the most savage part of the whole report. The source explicitly groups the speculative altcoins, things like Doge, Shiba Inu, all the meme coins, right here alongside Venezuela and Zimbabwe.
It is a powerful statement.
It's more than powerful, it's savage.
It is. The rationale is laid out very clearly. It says no anchor, no governance, pure speculation. Just like a failed fiat currency has no anchor because the government is fiscally incompetent, a meme coin has no anchor because it's just a joke or a gamble.
Yeah.
There's no underlying economic value.
So in the eyes of the GMES framework,
In the eyes of this framework, a currency that relies purely on social media hype on the idea of number go up is functionally identical to a currency issued by a collapsed state. Both are profoundly unsafe for an average person to hold their life savings in.
wow. So Dogecoin and the Venezuelan bolivar are sitting at the same table in the cafeteria of global money. That really puts things in perspective. It tells you that a rising price chart is not the same thing as quality money.
Not at all. A bubble looks fantastic right up until the moment it pops. Good, solid engineering looks boring right up until the storm hits.
So we've gone through the pillars, we've seen the rankings, we have this new true top three emerging from the data. Let's try to synthesize all of this in our final segment. The source concludes there are really three different winners depending on what you value most.
Correct. It's a kind of trilemma. You can't have it all in one package, at least not right now.
Okay, lay it out for us. What's the trilemma?
Okay, if you value global adoption, if what matters most is liquidity, universal acceptance, raw network effects, then the winner is, and remains, the USD. It is still the ocean that all other financial fish swim in. If you need to buy oil or weapons or wheat anywhere in the world, you need dollars, period.
Okay, winner by adoption, the dollar. What's next?
If you value reserve strength and governance complexity, that is, a system designed to manage a diverse block of powerful, independent nations under one monetary umbrella, then the euro is the winner. The ECB structure is a marvel of political engineering, even with its flaws.
And the third winner.
But if you value pure structural design, if you're looking at the blueprint, the architecture, the asset backing, the rules, the science of money, then the winner, according to this report, is AESC. And the report explicitly states, and I'm quoting here, lawful covenant economy, structurally superior, outperforms cryptos and rivals, USD by design.
That really is the aha moment of the entire deep dive, isn't it? We are in a transition period. The dollar wins on volume and history. The ASC wins on architecture and backing.
And that concept of backing the MAS1 reserve, whether you accept the quadrillion valuation as literal or metaphorical, it represents a profound conceptual shift. It's a move away from the idea that money is debt to a renewed idea that money is an asset. It's a return to money being something, not just a promise of something in the future.
And the report frames the GMES score itself as a design roadmap. It's not just a judgment, it's a to-do list for countries and currency creators.
Exactly. It's actionable. Weak signals in the score link directly to global standards and concrete actions. If your currency is weak in the plumbing pillar, the fix is clear. Adopt ISO 2022. If your currency is weak in the integrity pillar, the fix is clear. Improve your AML effectiveness ratings and enforcement. It takes the mystery out of how to build better money. It says, here's the checklist, go fix it.
So to wrap this all up, what we've really seen today is a shift from judging money by the flag it wears, oh, it's American, it must be good, to judging it by the code, the laws, and the reserves that actually back it up.
That is the fundamental shift.
Yeah.
And it means that whether you're a government official, a crypto investor, or just someone trying to save for retirement, you have to look past the logo and the brand name. Quality matters.
Yeah.
And we now have a framework for measuring it.
So liquidity is king today, that's the dollar. But structure is the queen of tomorrow, and that looks like ASC or perhaps a very highly designed CBDC from a major central bank.
Well put.
It brings us to the final provocative thought for our listeners. If the ASC is, as this report claims, structurally superior to the dollar and backed by these massive, almost incomprehensible reserves, but the dollar has all the users, all the inertia, all the history, how long can that last? How long until a superior structure overtakes incumbent adoption?
That is the trillion-dollar question, isn't it? Or does habit always win over design? We all use QWERTY keyboards, even though they were designed to be inefficient just because we are all used to them. Money might be the same. The dollar is the QWERTY keyboard of global finance.
But in a digital age where the costs of switching are getting lower and lower every year, maybe, just maybe, quality and superior design will finally win out.
It's a fascinating battle to watch.
The report card is out and the grades are in. Now we just have to see who improves their score before the next semester. Thanks for diving in with us.
A real pleasure.